Okay, in this part of the lesson, we're going to be working with identifying congruent figures. Two figures are considered congruent when their corresponding angles and corresponding sides are congruent. So once again, let's review what congruent means. Congruent means an exact copy. It has to be the same size and the same shape. So these two figures, ABC and DEF, are considered congruent figures. You'll be working with corresponding sides and angles. This part, we're just going to be working with identifying whether two figures are considered congruent or not. So once again, they have to be the exact same shape and the same size. If they give you angle measures, you'll notice here on these figures, they have marked these angles with some distinct markings. Those markings they use to identify angle measures. So for example, angle B has the same marking as E. So I would know that those two are congruent or copies of each other. If I knew that B was 85 degrees, then E would also have to be 85 degrees because they are congruent or copies of each other. F and C are marked in the same type of markings. So if I knew that, say, angle C was 40 degrees, then angle F would have to be 40 degrees because they have the same markings. Okay, then you can see that D and A are also marked the same, which means they are equal in measure. According to side lengths, you'll notice sometimes that they will mark the sides with a little tick mark. Okay, so if they have the same markings, that means that they are the same sides. When we are working congruent figures, it also means that they're the exact same measure. As we get into similar figures later in this chapter, it just means that those are the same sides of the figure. So here, because we are working congruent figures, which means they are exact copies of each other, if I knew that AB was 7 centimeters, then that means that DF would also be 7 centimeters. Okay, they are marked with the same type of markings. So here you'll notice I have 3 tick marks. Here's 3 tick marks. So that means that AC, let's say AC was a measure of 15 centimeters, then that would mean that DF would also be 15 centimeters. Okay, when you're working congruent figures, everything is exactly the same. Okay, this symbol that they use for congruent, right here, I know it doesn't show up the best, but it is a little wavy line with an equal sign. That means congruent, means an exact copy. So here they're identifying that triangle ABC is congruent to DEF. They may not put it in words like this. They may put it in a symbol form like the second one down. So you have to understand what those symbols mean. All right, we're going to go ahead and work with identifying some congruent figures. So once again, congruent is an exact copy. All right, so let's start with this one. Which square is congruent to square A? So take note, they have to have the same angle measures as well as the same side lengths. So when I look at this one, it looks like all of them have 90-degree angle measures for every corner, or approximately. I guess they didn't mark them. We're assuming, because it says it is a square, we have to understand that that means that every angle is going to be 90 degrees. So we can't knock it out due to angle measure. Let's go ahead and look at our side measures. We have 8 whatever, whether it's inches, feet, miles, whatever. We have 9 on every side, or we have 8. So the two squares that are congruent would be angles, or square C and square A. Even though they rotated square C, it is still considered congruent. So congruent figures can be rotated. Let's try another one. Identify the figure that is congruent to the example. So congruent, well, it has to be the same shape. So we can eliminate C because that's an oval versus a circle. And it has to be the exact same size. So A is smaller, so it would be figure B. Let's try another one. Identify the figure that is congruent to the example. So it looks like we have a rectangle. Well, here A is eliminated because the angle measures aren't the same. B, our side lengths aren't the same because this is a square, so it can't be B. That leaves us with C to be congruent or an exact copy. And I want you to try these two. So go ahead and pause your video, identify which figures are congruent to the example figure. Okay, for the first one, A and C were not the same shape of triangle. And for the second one, too few sides, too many sides, A is our exact copy. That's it for working with congruent figures. Once again, congruent figures are going to be two figures that are exact matches to each other. They'll have the same angle measure and the same side lengths.